Rowan woke on his couch with his shoes still on and water dripping steadily onto the hardwood from the hem of his coat. The last thing he remembered was gripping the steering wheel, rain lashing the windshield as he drove toward Mara's apartment. Now the city outside was pale with early morning, the storm still unbroken. His watch read 4:17 a.m. His phone read 7:52. 3 hours missing. His keys were still in his pocket. His sidearm was on the table. His hands ached as if he'd been holding something too tightly for too long. On the table beside his gun sat the scrap of green wool he'd found the night before. Only now it wasn't alone. Someone, he didn't believe for a second it was him, had placed a brittle, yellowed newspaper clipping next to it. The headline was from 1983. Mysterious storm claims local woman. The woman's name was Clara Linscott. The photo showed her smiling, coat buttoned to the throat, green wool, identical to Alara's. The article was vague. Witnesses said she had vanished into the storm without a trace. Police suspected she'd been swept into a drainage channel, but her body was never recovered. The more Rowan dug, the worse the picture became. This wasn't 9 cases. It wasn't even 10. This had been happening for over a century, each victim disappearing during a violent downpour, often after days or months of strange, untraceable contact. Police folklore called them the Rainkeepers. The rain outside picked up. Somewhere in the building, a phone rang, not his. An hour later, another envelope arrived under his door. Inside was a map of the city with red X's marking 9 sites, each one a Rainkeeper disappearance scene. A 10th was marked only a few blocks away from his apartment. He stared at it for a long time, until the ink from the map began to blur where rainwater dripped from his sleeve. The 10th X led him to the industrial district, where the storm turned the cracked asphalt streets into shallow rivers. The building at that address was an old brick structure with warped plywood nailed over its windows. A rusted sign above the door read Harker and Sons Textiles, letters fading into the rain. The lock on the front door was long gone. Rowan pushed it open, the hinges groaning. Inside, the air was heavy with the smell of mildew and damp paper. The only light came from thin gaps in the boards, leaking pale, watery beams into the gloom, and in those beams he saw them photographs. Dozens. They covered the walls from floor to ceiling, pinned with rusted nails curling at the edges. All were black and white, grainy, and all showed people moments before they vanished. Smiles half-formed, eyes looking over shoulders, bodies caught mid-step. Some images were decades old. Rowan's gaze froze on one wall. Mara, Alara, both in the same narrow alley, and there, farther down, himself, standing outside the Quinn building in the rain. The photo was dated 2 nights ago. A floorboard groaned above him. "Rowan." The voice was faint, muffled but distinct. He followed it to a stairwell that smelled of wet wood and rust. Each step groaned under his weight. On the 2nd floor, the air grew colder. The voice called again. By the time he reached the 3rd floor landing, he could barely see more than a few feet ahead. The hallway stretched unnaturally long, like a trick of perspective. At the far end stood the hooded figure, motionless. Rowan began walking toward it, boots thudding softly against warped boards. The closer he got, the more the air thickened, heavy and damp, as though he was walking into the heart of the storm itself. Halfway down the hall, the lights flickered. The figure was suddenly closer, no sound of movement, no shadow passing. 1 second far, the next, only a few paces away. The hood tilted upward. Beneath it was not emptiness exactly, but a depth, like staring into the surface of dark water. Shapes shifted in that darkness, streets he didn't know, rain falling in unfamiliar cities, strangers, faces peering back at him. All of them seemed to be watching him. He reached for his weapon, but his hand slowed, heavy, like moving through water. The figure raised one hand. In its palm was an envelope, edges perfectly dry. The lights went out. When they came back on, Rowan was outside, rain soaking his hair, his coat, his hands. The boarded building was gone. In its place was an empty lot overgrown with wet grass. No footprints, no signs of recent disturbance. At his feet lay the envelope. Inside was a photograph. Not a Lara, not Mara, not any past victim. This time, it showed a young woman standing beneath a street lamp, her hair plastered to her face by rain. Rowan didn't know her. The timestamp on the back read, "Tomorrow." Rowan sat in his car for almost an hour, the photograph resting on the passenger seat like something alive. The rain pounded steadily against the roof, a deep, slow rhythm that didn't quite match the wind outside, too even, too deliberate. The girl in the photo was maybe 20, shoulder-length hair plastered to her face by the rain. Her expression wasn't quite fear, but not calm either. It was the same look he'd seen on people who had already decided they wouldn't make it home. Back at the precinct, he scanned the photo into the database, running facial recognition against every state and federal system he had access to. Result: no matches found. That didn't make sense. Even if she was a drifter, even if she had no official ID, there should have been something. A blurry ID photo from a school yearbook, a social media tag, a traffic camera hit. Everyone left some trace. Rowan dug into the digital file itself, adjusting exposure, scanning the pixels. That's when he noticed it. There was no grain variation in the background. The rain didn't streak differently from pixel to pixel. It was frozen, identical in every drop, like a looped image. The street lamp's glow had no flicker. The shadows on the wet pavement didn't shift. The only sign of motion in the entire frame was a faint shimmer in the girl's eyes, like the instant before a blink. The timestamp printed on the back said, "Tomorrow 9:46 p.m. Rowan checked the weather. The forecast called for heavy rainfall starting at 7 p.m., peaking around 10. He didn't go home that night. Instead, he printed the photograph, folded it into his pocket, and wrote in block letters across the top, "Rainkeeper File 10. At 2:11 a.m., his phone rang from a blocked number. Rowan answered immediately. No one spoke. Only the sound of falling rain came through, louder than it should have been, like the phone was held under an open sky, not in the dead hours of night. Then a whisper. "Wrong street." The line went dead. The next evening, Rowan staked out every street lamp in the district that matched the one in the photograph. He checked angles, light temperatures, even the distance between lamp posts. He found 6 good matches. By 7 p.m., the rain had started, soft at first, then swelling into a steady, windless downpour. His windshield blurred, neon reflections smeared across the wet streets. He rotated between the 6 locations, keeping his eyes open for any hint of the girl. At 9:45 p.m., while parked near the 4th location, a shape flickered in his side mirror, a figure stepping into the glow of a street lamp 2 blocks away. The girl. Rowan was out of the car in seconds, splashing through ankle-deep water, badge in one hand, flashlight in the other. The rain muffled everything except the slap of his boots. She stood exactly as in the photograph, hair plastered to her face, head tilted slightly toward him, shoulders drawn tight as if bracing for something. "You're safe now," Rowan called, trying to keep his voice steady. "Come with me." The air changed, heavy, pressed down on him like the atmosphere before a storm, only this one was already here. From the edge of his vision, movement, the hooded figure in the crosswalk, rain streaming off the fabric in unnatural sheets. No face beneath the hood, just that depthless dark. It raised its hand. The girl's lips moved, silent beneath the rain's roar. A single word, "Run." Rowan stepped forward. The distance between them should have been shrinking, but it was. The street stretched in subtle, impossible ways, each step feeling heavier, as if the asphalt itself was holding him back. The hooded figure was suddenly closer. No footsteps, no sound, just closer. The darkness where its face should be seemed to reach for him, pulling, tugging at something deep in his chest. Lightning split the sky, white and blinding. When his vision cleared, the girl was gone. At his feet, an envelope floated in a shallow puddle. The paper inside was dry. It was a photograph. This one showed Rowan himself, standing beneath the same street lamp, rain dripping from his hair, his face caught in a half-lit expression somewhere between confusion and fear. The timestamp read, next week 9:46 p.m.